Tom and Elena had been married for 7 years, and from the outside, their life looked almost perfect. A comfortable home, stable jobs, and routines that made everything feel predictable. But inside the walls of their marriage, something unspoken had been growing silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, cold kind that slowly replaces passion with habit. They still loved each other, yes, but the spark that once set their hearts on fire had dimmed to a quiet glow. Their closest friends, Lucas and Mia, were the opposite. They were bold, adventurous, always chasing excitement. Dinner nights with them were filled with jokes, debates, and stories about unusual experiences. Over the years, Lucas and Mia occasionally made playful comments about modern relationships, teasing Tom and Elena about their habit of playing everything safe. It was all just humor. Or at least it seemed so. One evening, the four gathered for dinner at Lucas and Mia's home. Wine flowed, candles flickered, and the atmosphere felt unusually warm. The conversation drifted from work stress to trust, in relationships, then to intimacy, and finally, almost unexpectedly, to partner swapping. What started as a joke suddenly took on a strange seriousness. The room felt tighter, the air thicker. Elena laughed nervously, thinking the idea was ridiculous. Tom raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Mia looked mischievous, as if she had been waiting for this door to open. Lucas leaned back, watching everyone's reactions with calm curiosity. The more they talked, the more layers of the idea revealed themselves. Mia said that exploring boundaries could strengthen trust. Lucas argued that honesty mattered more than tradition. Tom, who rarely expressed vulnerability, quietly admitted that he and Elena hadn't been close in a long time. That confession surprised Elena, who suddenly felt exposed. Had he really been that unhappy? The conversation deepened. They discussed emotions, fears, jealousy, and loyalty. Each question led to another. Each answer peeled away a new insecurity. Hours passed, and the four realized they weren't joking anymore. They were considering something real. Elena's heart raced. She wasn't sure what frightened her more, the idea itself or the fact that part of her was curious. Tom felt torn. He wanted to protect his marriage, but he also couldn't ignore the sense that something was missing. Lucas and Mia, though outwardly relaxed, felt a flutter of nervous excitement. By the end of the night, the group made a decision. They agreed to try it one time, with rules, boundaries, and absolute honesty. An experiment, they called it. Wait to see what trust truly meant. But as they sealed the agreement with a quiet, tense nod, none of them noticed how dramatically their lives had just shifted. In that dimly lit room with empty glasses and shaky smiles, they had opened a door that could never be fully closed again. In that moment, the experiment felt like a step into adventure. They had no idea it was the beginning of a storm waiting to break. The night of the agreement arrived much faster than any of them expected. Days earlier, the idea had felt abstract, bold, maybe even exciting, but now that it was real, the weight of it pressed on their chests like a silent warning. Tom and Elena drove to Lucas and Mia's house in near silence. The car felt colder than usual, despite the warm night air. Elena stared out the window, her fingers tapping nervously on her knee. Tom kept both hands tense on the steering wheel, stealing quick glances at her, wondering whether they should turn around. But neither of them spoke. The agreement hung between them like a fragile thread. At Lucas and Mia's door, the hostess greeted them with a smile that looked confident, but her eyes flickered with nerves. Lucas, usually loud and joking, seemed unusually calm, almost too calm, as if he was trying to control the situation before it even unfolded. They all sat together, trying to act normal, drinking wine, making small talk about work, weather, anything except the thing they were there to do. But the conversation felt forced. Every laugh sounded shaky. Every silence felt like a wave pressing down on them. Finally, Lucas broke the tension. "So, should we talk about how this works?" he asked. That simple question changed the atmosphere instantly. They discussed rules: no secrets, no emotional promises, stop at any moment if someone felt uncomfortable. They repeated these rules not because they were clear, but because they needed something to hold on to. Then came the moment they couldn't delay. The pairs were chosen as agreed. Tom with Mia, Elena with Lucas. The moment the pairs separated, something inside Elena tightened. She felt an unexpected fear, not of Lucas, but of losing the part of herself she had always protected. Meanwhile, Tom followed Mia into the living room, feeling his pulse thundering in his ears. At first, things were painfully awkward. Mia tried to lighten the mood with gentle conversation, asking Tom about his work, his goals, his frustrations. Tom answered nervously, avoiding eye contact. But Mia's open, comforting tone slowly eased him. She listened with a warmth he hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Elena, on the other hand, found Lucas surprisingly gentle. They started by talking, hesitantly at first, but then deeper, about loneliness, marriage pressure, the expectations that slowly suffocate passion. Lucas complimented her laugh, her strength, her honesty. Elena felt seen, truly seen, in a way that startled her. As minutes turned into hours, the emotional lines that once kept them safe blurred. What was supposed to be physical exploration turned unexpectedly emotional. Tom felt Mia's understanding touch a part of him he didn't even know was starving. Elena felt Lucas awaken a side of her she thought she had lost forever. The four of them had walked into the night thinking they could control the experience, contain it within rules. But something deeper had been unlocked. And by the time the night ended, none of them could deny it. The balance of their relationships had shifted in a way that would be impossible to undo. Morning light streamed through the curtains, bright and unforgiving, almost as if it wanted to expose every truth the darkness had hidden. Tom and Elena returned home separately in the same car, but neither dared to speak. The silence between them felt heavier than ever before, thick enough to choke on. Last night had changed something, and both of them knew it. They just didn't know how to articulate the feeling. At home, Tom placed his keys on the counter and walked straight to the kitchen, pretending to look for coffee. Elena went to the bedroom, pretending to look for something in the closet. They each avoided the other, as though eye contact alone might reveal too much. Tom finally broke the silence. "So, are you okay?" It was a simple question, but it held 1,000 hidden meanings. Elena hesitated. "I don't know," she whispered. She didn't know how to describe the strange mixture of guilt, confusion, and unexpected clarity swirling inside her. Part of her felt ashamed. Part of her felt awakened. And another part felt completely lost. Tom wasn't doing much better. His mind replayed the night with Mia, not the physical part, but the emotional vulnerability he had shown. Why had he opened up so easily? Why had he felt understood? They both avoided discussing one question. Did you enjoy it? Because each feared the other's answer. Across town, Lucas and Mia were experiencing their own uncomfortable morning. Lucas, normally composed, stared blankly at the wall while Mia sat on the couch clutching a pillow. The energy between them was tense, almost brittle. Mia felt guilty for how deeply she had connected with Tom. Lucas felt something he had never expected, jealousy mixed with fear. This experiment had been his idea, but he hadn't anticipated how it would unravel the delicate threads of their relationship. By afternoon, the tension grew unbearable. Tom suggested they all meet again to talk, believing that clearing the air might help. Elena agreed, though her stomach twisted at the thought. When the four finally gathered in Lucas and Mia's living room, the atmosphere felt drastically different from the night before. The room was quiet, almost cold. No wine, no jokes, no candles, just raw tension. Mia spoke first, her voice barely steady. "We need to talk about what last night did to us." And then, like a dam breaking, the truths began to spill. Elena admitted she had felt emotions she didn't expect. Tom confessed he had felt closer to someone in one night than he had in months. Mia opened up about feeling genuinely appreciated. Lucas acknowledged that for the first time, he felt insecure, truly insecure about losing. Mia. Their words cracked something inside every one of them. This wasn't just jealousy. This wasn't just guilt. This was exposure, the kind that stripped relationships down to their raw core. The four of them had believed the experiment would be physical and nothing more. But instead, it had unearthed every invisible wound, insecurity, and unspoken resentment they had ignored for years. The room fell silent again, but this time the silence wasn't empty. It was full of truths they could no longer hide from, and deep down, all of them sensed the same terrifying reality. This was only the beginning of the emotional storm headed their way. The group meeting continued, but the more they talked, the more the room felt like a pressure chamber about to explode. The walls seemed to hold their breath as emotions one by one found their voices. This wasn't a discussion anymore, it was a confession circle, and every secret carried a sharp edge. Mia was the first to break the tension completely. She wiped a tear from her cheek and finally admitted what she had been hiding for years. "I don't feel seen by Lucas anymore. I feel like I'm living with a stranger who doesn't hear me." Her voice cracked. The statement hit Lucas like a slap. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rubbing his forehead as if trying to hold himself together. He had always thought he was a good partner, responsible, stable. But Mia's words revealed a truth he had refused to look at. Tom and Elena exchanged a glance, both realizing this wasn't just about the swap. It was about everything underneath their relationships. Then Tom spoke softly, carefully, as if afraid his words might cause a new wound. "I didn't realize how disconnected we were," he said, turning to Elena. "Last night, talking with Mia, it made me notice how much I've been holding back from you. I don't even know why." Elena's throat tightened. Hearing him admit that hurt more than anything he had physically done. It made the emotional distance they had both sensed but never named feel painfully real. Elena didn't speak at first. She stared at the floor, fingers twisting together nervously. But when she finally looked up, her eyes were full of a vulnerability she had hidden for years. "I felt invisible for a long time," she whispered. "Like I'm just moving through life next to you, not with you. And last night, Lucas reminded me what it feels like to be noticed." Her voice trembled with the truth she had been afraid to confront. Tom felt the blow. Not because she had been with Lucas, but because she had needed someone else to feel acknowledged. Lucas, meanwhile, looked at Elena with a mixture of guilt and understanding. He knew his attention had meant something more than he intended. The silence that followed was heavy and emotional. Each of them sat with their own reflection, their own guilt, their own awakening. Lucas finally sighed, breaking the stillness. "Maybe the swap didn't create these problems," he admitted. "Maybe it just exposed what was already broken." And that statement hung in the air like a bell ringing. All four realized the same chilling truth. It wasn't the act of infidelity that hurt the most. It was everything the act revealed: the loneliness, the emotional neglect, the unmet needs, the fears they had buried under routine. Tears came, some quietly, some violently. Arguments rose then died just as quickly. The honesty had opened wounds too deep to ignore. By the end of the meeting, no one was angry anymore, just exhausted, overwhelmed, and painfully aware that nothing would ever go back to how it was. They left with the same terrifying question echoing in their minds. Are our relationships strong enough to survive the truths we finally spoke out loud? After the explosive meeting, the four of them quietly drifted apart. There were no more group dinners, no more shared jokes, no more casual messages. For the first time in years, each couple faced their relationship without distractions, without the comfort of their friends, without the illusion that everything was normal. Tom and Elena agreed to take a temporary break from each other, not a separation but space. Tom moved into the guest room while Elena stayed in the bedroom. The physical distance grew, but the emotional distance felt even wider. Every morning they exchanged polite greetings like two coworkers sharing a kitchen. Not two people who once dreamed of forever. During his time alone, Tom finally confronted himself. He realized how often he had shut down emotionally, not because he didn't care, but because he feared vulnerability. He hated showing weakness, hated the idea of failing Elena, so he hid behind silence. But he also realized that silence was its own kind of failure. One night, Tom sat in the dark living room, staring at old photos of their early years, laughing on the beach, dancing in the kitchen, kissing in crowded streets. He barely recognized the man he used to be. Somewhere along the way, he had let fear steal the intimacy they once had. Elena, meanwhile, used her own time apart to reflect. She attended therapy sessions alone, where she confronted her feelings of invisibility. She realized she had resented Tom for drifting away, yet she had never told him how lonely she felt. She had built quiet walls around her heart, convincing herself that needing him made her weak. But Lucas's attention had shown her something uncomfortable. She didn't want another man. She wanted her husband to see her again. Across town, Lucas and Mia faced a different reality. Lucas tried hard to reconnect with Mia, cooking her favorite meals, listening more carefully, giving more affection. But Mia felt conflicted. The emotional clarity she experienced with Tom wasn't something she could ignore. It wasn't love, but it was a mirror reflecting what she lacked at home. Mia also sought therapy, where she finally admitted she had been emotionally starving for years. And Lucas, sitting alone after their fights, began to realize that he had always assumed she'd stay simply because she loved him. He never considered that love could fade quietly. Weeks passed. Slowly, it became clear to all four of them. The swap hadn't ruined anything. It had exposed what was already broken. Tom felt himself wanting Elena more than ever, not physically, but emotionally. He wanted to try again, honestly this time. Elena felt a small spark return, not because things were perfect, but because they were finally facing the truth. Lucas and Mia, on the other hand, struggled more each day. Their attempts at reconnection felt forced, fragile, almost artificial. They weren't rebuilding, they were pretending. Distance didn't destroy anything. Distance revealed everything. Everything they feared. Everything they wanted. Everything they could no longer deny. Now, each couple stood before the same final question. Should they walk away or rebuild from zero? Weeks of silence, reflection, and emotional distance brought the four of them to the edge of a new beginning or an inevitable ending. None of them knew which outcome awaited, but all agreed on one thing. They couldn't continue living with unanswered questions. So they arranged one final meeting. Not to talk about the past, but to decide their future. This time, they met at a quiet cafe instead of someone's home. A neutral place. A safe place. The air was thick with anticipation, but also calmer than before, like the storm had finally passed, leaving only the truth behind. Tom and Elena arrived together, not holding hands, but not distant either. Lucas and Mia walked in separately and sat side by side, a little awkwardly, a little sadly. No one ordered coffee. No one pretended. Things were normal. They all knew this conversation would define everything. Tom was the first to speak. He looked at Elena with a softness she hadn't seen in years. "I don't want to lose you," he said quietly. "Not because of one night and not because of years of silence. I want to rebuild. But only if you want that too. Not for comfort. Not for habit, for us." Elena felt tears press against her eyes. His voice wasn't defensive, wasn't fearful, it was honest. For the first time in a long time, she heard vulnerability instead of distance. "I want to rebuild too," she whispered. "But we need to start over, from zero. No pretending. No holding emotions back." For Tom, it felt like a weight was being lifted. For Elena, it felt like hope was finally returning, not in a perfect form, but in a real one. They didn't promise instant healing. They didn't pretend everything would be easy. They simply made a choice to face the truth together. Then it was Lucas and Mia's turn. Mia looked at Lucas, her eyes full of pain but also clarity. "I've tried to reconnect. I've tried to go back to how we used to be. But the truth is, I'm not the same person anymore. And I don't think we can rebuild something that broke long before this happened." Lucas nodded slowly. He wasn't angry, not anymore, just sad, deeply sad. "I know," he admitted. "I felt it too. I think we've been holding on to a memory of us, not the reality of us." Their decision wasn't made out of resentment. It wasn't punishment. It was acceptance. Mia gently touched his hand one last time. "I'll always care about you. But we need different things now." Lucas managed a small emotional smile. "Then let's let each other go with respect." And just like that, the four of them found their paths diverging. Tom and Elena left the cafe with renewed commitment, ready to rebuild from the bricks of honesty instead of the dust of routine. Lucas and Mia walked out separately, but with lighter hearts, knowing they were choosing truth over comfort. The partner swap they thought would be a simple experiment had instead forced them all to confront who they truly were, what they needed, and what they could no longer ignore. In the end, it wasn't the night that changed their lives. It was the truth that followed.